There we go. So I'm going to, there was a question from Ali Anwar, and I'll start with that because it is a shorter question, and I think it has, it's a short question that I think has a very interesting kind of exploration around it. So the other question was longer, but I think sort of maybe the response will be shorter. The question from Ali Anwar is that he says, I have a question regarding the chase. Without the chase, without focus or eye on the goal, why should one be doing anything? I mean, there won't be left much of the things in the realm of doing if I'm not chasing a salary. I would immediately leave my job and just sit in meditation. That's the only act of non-doing which seems enchanting to me. Or maybe some swaying into the tunes of the wind. Why would I put myself into the whirlpool of capitalism without moving my eyes away from the goal, with moving my eyes away from the goal or outcomes? So there's a single line here which I think encapsulates the question. And the question is, isn't all movement because of a lack of, I beg your pardon, isn't all movement because of a lack of perception? I beg your pardon. Say it again. Isn't all movement because of lack or a perception of lack? So this idea that, in our normal lives, we are so outcome focused. I mean, our culture is so outcome focused that we're so sort of yanked around by our need for earning a salary and kind of pursuing, things that we want to get from life, the goals that we're trying to get from life, that we very easily kind of get sucked into sort of thinking that there's no alternative way of looking at things, there's only one way of doing this, and that is to sort of be outcome focused. I just want to mute Aisha because I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon, folks. There you go. So I'm going to say it again. Ali Anwar's question was, is there any point to act, what would be the point of doing anything at all without a desire, some focus on goals, because we are so goal-directed in our current culture. And how he phrased it isn't all movement because of lack or perception of lack. And I think this is true with how we generally consider intent or motive. If you look at how people construct the idea of intent, it is a forward-looking word. So what do you intend to do? And it also describes a requirement to achieve something as an outcome. I want to achieve, earn a salary. I want to achieve this goal. All intent is aimed forward, and you can describe intent and the structure of how we view intent as an emptiness, a lack, in Ali Anwar's terms, that seeks to be filled. All action is an emptiness that seeks to be filled. All intent describes an emptiness that seeks to be filled. It's also very interesting that Ali Anwar described this emptiness as a lack. And the question would be, is if you got the antonym to the word lack, and then say, well, would there still be a reason to act? That would be quite an interesting exploration. So in my view, the antonym to a lack is abundance. If I had a feeling of abundance, would I still do things? And actually, I think I would. It is like saying a joyful person sings. They don't just sit quietly in the corner and they do act. It is possible to make joy and contentment the foundation of your action. Now, when one does that, when you make joy and contentment and fullness, a sense of abundance, the root of your being, you do act and you can act, but your action has a completely different quality. It is no longer overladen with a manipulation or an intent to manipulate and a heaviness. It becomes a lightness which is experienced as a blessing to the world. Now, just like you can spontaneously act out of a spirit of joy, in other words, that your heart isn't an emptiness that seeks to be filled. It's not a lack that wants to achieve something, needs to be replenished, but that your heart is rather fullness that empties, that your heart is bathed in a spirit of abundance that overflows. That's what the word fadlallah means, right? The overflowing, that your heart overflows. That you can do anything from that point of view. You don't just, it's not just singing that you could do from that point of view. I've had this on occasion in training. So I very often, professionally, I've conducted workshops as a consultant, and I've trained as a consultant. And I must say, not always. I mean, very often I've had in the past, I've had my work burdened with the spirit of having to earn a living. So I'm just getting through this so I can kind of send the client an invoice. But I have also had the opposite experience where I'm in a room and I get a sense of something moving through me, that being in the room with this group of people that I'm working with is an opportunity, if you like, to both witness and bear witness. So in that sense, the delight that I have of working with things that cause surprise. Now, what, things that uplift people. That is a joy which is possible whether or not I'm being paid for this the thing that I'm doing. In fact, I've had the experience of doing what I do professionally, both sort of pro bono, and that experience of the joy at the surprise. And the wonder at the surprise of people when they see something which is uplifting, when their hearts are uplifted, that is an end in itself. That is an experience of fullness. And that experience of fullness then grows on itself. It becomes exponential. So you walk into the room with a sense of wonder, and you manifest that sense of wonder by explaining something which is wondrous and wonderful. The people that you're talking to see the same thing that you're seeing, and they get enthused by it. Their hearts are uplifted. Then when you walk out of that room, you have a sense of upliftment that you had when you came into the room squared. It is joy upon joy. So when you act on the basis of a fullness that empties, then when you finished acting, you are nourished by the thing that you did. There's joy upon joy. It is joy squared, if you like. So there's a way of acting which is not about emptiness. There's a way of acting which is not about lack. There's a way of acting which is actually rooted in fullness, that's rooted in abundance. And that way of acting can be in any context. It can be in any situation. In fact, the context itself is kind of irrelevant. So I mean, you can play a musical instrument like this. You can balance a set of accounts in the spirit, because there are rules that govern how one does this. It really has to do with what you do with your attention. Ali Anwar mentioned that the only way that he could conceive of being in this state of, rather than being at work, that you can conceive of being in the state as being in a state of of meditation outside of the kind of the humdrum of day-to-day life and swaying with the wind. It's a wonderful image, swaying with the wind in dhikr. But can one recapture that experience in doing a task? And I actually think you can, and it really does not. It's not dependent on the nature of the task. So the rule to this is that you do the task with the intent to do the task well, and not just to get through doing the task. Right. So we said that fundamentally fullness, this idea of fullness, the feeling of fullness is really a feeling of gratitude. It's saying, I have received in excess of my due. It is only once my heart is full like that in fact it is possible for me to give. Otherwise, my giving is burdensome. My giving is still contractual in a sense. I'm giving in order to get something. It might be a benign thing that I'm trying to get, which is a result for somebody else. But unless my giving is rooted in gratitude, unless my giving is rooted in a sense of fullness, it's actually taking disguised. Giving is only giving if it's given to give away, and you can only honestly give to give away if you have an experience of abundance, if there's an overflowing, if your heart is overflowing. Now, that experience of giving to give away translates into the shifting your attention in whatever you're doing from outcome into process. Anything that you get, if you think about two elements that you're working with. There's outcome, the goal you're trying to achieve, and this process. There's the thing that you're doing in order to achieve the goal. Now, both of those variables are operative in any action. If the process of what you're doing, I'm doing this in order to achieve the goal, then basically the text of that intent is a taking text. I am paying this price to get the outcome that I want. So I'm doing this to get that. You can also say that what you're doing is the giving part of the equation. So the goal is the getting part of the equation, and the process, the thing that you're doing, is the giving part of the equation. It's what sits in your hands. It's what's leaving you. Now you can say, actually, I can shift the purpose of the thing that I'm doing from the goal to doing the thing to do it well, doing the thing to sort of in a spirit of excellence, if you like. In other words, the full heart that acts with a full heart doesn't just sit still. The full heart acts, but the full heart acts to do things, to do them well. However, it is useful to have an outcome because an outcome sort of provides you with a process. So we have a metaphor for this. We've spoken about this idea of walking up a mountain, hey? And you've probably heard me refer to this before. I could say I'm walking to get to the top of the mountain. So there's two parts to this activity. There's the walking, which is the process, and there's the top of the mountain, which is the goal. I've turned the top of the mountain, rather the outcome, into the purpose. I'm walking to get to the top of the mountain. I could say, but hold on, actually, I really enjoy walking. And I cannot have a good walk if I don't have a challenge to the walk. So if there isn't a top of the mountain, which means the top of the mountain is my means to walk well. In other words, the purpose of what I'm doing is not the goal. The purpose of what I'm doing is the process. The goal just allows me to create a good process. So it's a flip, you see. You're shifting purpose from outcome into process. Now, in other words, the top of the mountain, the outcome, the goal is your means to have a good walk, to walk well. If you do a set of accounts in that spirit, I mean, yes, I need to earn a living and I am doing these accounts, but there is such a thing as a set of accounts being done well, that there's a set, whatever the criteria are for doing the accounting process well. And I make that the purpose of what I'm doing. Doing that set of accounts can be a fullness that empties. So you can do any activity in a spirit of sacralizing the activity. And what I mean by sacralizing the activity is that it becomes an expression of abundance. It becomes an expression of fullness. It's not a statement of lack or of emptiness that is trying to get something else. That shift of outcome into process is irrespective of the activity. Doesn't matter what the activity is. You can wash dishes from this point of view. You can wash dishes. You can say, well, there's two ways of looking at this pile of dishes on the kitchen sink. The one is, man, this is awful, and I want to get rid of this. The other is actually, what does it look like when I wash the dishes well? So that the dirty dishes, getting the dishes clean, is an opportunity for me to do the washing. So I'm not looking for the noun. I'm not looking for the clean sink. I'm looking for the verb. I'm looking for the washing. What does it do? And there are rules that you can apply to this. What does it mean to do a thing to do it well? It means, first of all, I understand what the criteria are for doing this well. And every person would have their own criteria. I would have my own criteria for doing dishes well. I would make sure that in every part of the process, I do the process well. And when I do that, the activity, particularly if I make the activity complex enough, or it absorbs so much of my attention that for a moment I lose myself in the washing of the dishes, and the washing of the dishes becomes a joyful experience, not just an onerous chore. You have to understand, when you act on the basis of how most of us act in our world, which is, I'm doing things just to get through the day to achieve an outcome, you reduce your life to chore. Your life doesn't have to be a chore. Your life can actually be a dance of delight. Your life can actually be an experience of joy. And this is not just the odd occasion in a dhikr or sort of a intimacy with a loved one. Or you can have this in every moment. This is the secret of the sunnah. Why is it that we turn absolutely everything into ritual? Why is it that how you cut your fingernails is a ritual? How you do your wudu is a ritual. How you do your ghusl is a ritual. What the ritual does is it provides you with a process. And when you do the process, it's a process that actually requires some attention. So you can't absent-mindedly go through this. You've got to be present while you're doing the process. When you give attention to the thing that you're doing, in the spirit of doing it to do it well, the activity fulfills you. Your fulfillment isn't just in the cut fingernails at the end. The fulfillment is a product of the process itself. And we've said before that there's nothing more powerful in existence than human attention. There's human attention sacralizes things. It makes them, because it is they denote what is significant. What did Allah say to Shaitan when we kind of what makes us human beings special is that we've been taught the names of things. We've been taught that we grant significance. We are the ones that designate significance. This is an immensely powerful thing. It makes us unique creatures in the whole. And when you make something significant, you give it meaning, and you make it worthy of attention. Now, if you're doing something just to achieve a result, if I'm working just to earn a salary, then basically you make the working insignificant, because it is the means, it is the thing that gets consumed and used to get the outcome that you want. So it's very important to understand that when you construct your intent in this way, that you do things in order to get outcomes, what you're doing exhausts you, it doesn't nourish you. But you can change this in such a by shifting your attention from outcome into processes, because then you make what you're doing, the process, significant. When you make the process of what you're doing significant, then what you do is you actually bring meaning into the moment. Clearly, goals are always outside of the moment. They're in the future. So if I make what's significant the goal, then where I am is insignificant. But when I shift my attention from outcome into process, I make where I am significant. And it's when I make where I am significant, I designate, I paint the moment with this wonder of my attention. I basically sacralize the moment. I make it sacred. So what the essence is of shifting attention from outcome to process, the reason why you do things to do them well, the reason why you cut your fingernails in terms of the prescripts of Sunnah, is not because you're trying to, store up some massive account in Akhirah. It's not about, it is you are sacralizing your life. You are making the experience of being alive a sacred experience, an experience of significance and of meaning, not an experience of just of being an arbitrary resource being used and to produce outcomes. Most of the worldview that we're in today views human beings, views the world as a resource to be used. Still today, you find most large organizations, when the function in the organization that works with people, they will call the human resources function. I mean, they do this quite shamelessly. It is a worldview of use. It is a worldview of consumption. It is not a worldview of nurturing. I mean, the opposite of use is care. The opposite of use is nurturing. It's taking care of, not consuming. So if you wish to not become if you wish not to be consumed, because I think that's the spirit of the question, Ali Anwar. The question is, how do I live a life that is outside of this gray humdrum of capitalist employment? Well, it's not about leaving the job and going to sit in a dhoti somewhere in a village with a begging bowl. It's not that at all. It is to understand that you don't have to follow the rules that everybody else follows. You don't have to do things just to get things. You don't have to turn yourself into a resource to get a salary at the end of the month. You can use the salary, you can use you being there as an opportunity for you to do what you're doing well, to sacralize the life that you have, to sacralize your immediate experience. Now, the last thing I want to say about this is that this is an insight that's so obvious, it's so simple, that we see it now and tomorrow it's gone. This is where it is useful to the word dhikr is useful. I mean, remembrance, remember, because we are forgetful. We are forgetful creatures. We are made like that. So I might see, but of course that's true. Yes, that is why am I doing this to myself? Why am I framing my world, my work world, in such a way that I experience it as exhausting and onerous? I can do this different. I might do this. I crack the code, and then I have 2 weeks of ecstatic experience at work, and then a couple of crises happen, and before I know it, I'm back in the old way of looking at things. This is the human story, and the reason why we forget is so that we can remember, because that surprise of remembering is really almost the reason why we're made. I mean, how do you How do you bear witness that life is uh, is 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 fundamentally extraordinary and wonderful if you don't witness that it's extraordinary and wonderful? And how do you propose to witness that it's extraordinary and wonderful if you're always presented with something that's extraordinary and wonderful? For instance, how do you propose to really appreciate your health if you don't on occasion get sick? If you don't know what it's like. So I've recently had some mobility problems with my legs, and that's now getting better. It's not as extreme. Man, I can't tell you the delight I have walking up a pair of just a set of stairs. You it's a completely different experience from what I had before. The pain that I had in my legs basically is a necessary ingredient that helps me to really appreciate what it feels like when my legs work well. The reason why we have darkness is so that we can have the delight of seeing things as they are, of realizing things as they are. So don't beat yourself up when you forget this obvious truth that you can sacralize your life by shifting attention from outcome into process. This is going to happen to you. And every time you see it again, you'll be surprised again. But like every human being, at some point you will get the equivalent of a spiritual flu. You'll get, and your attention will wander away and you'll be back in darkness. But that's fine, because the reason why you're back in darkness is so that you can truly experience the delight of seeing things as they are. And then what happens over a period of time is that seeing things as they are becomes an increasingly consistent condition, to the point where you may just as well be dead, because half of your being is already in paradise. And then maybe you can leave. And then there's a purpose to a life having been lived well. Inshallah. Thank you very much for the question, Ali Anwar. That was, I think it was a very useful kind of issue. The next question is, so where obviously I had a lot to say about Ali Anwar's question. There was a question, so I'm going to read it. It's quite long. And I might not understand it correctly. So let me read it first. If one is a toxic taker in nearly all their interactions, whereby he, she receives all the supposed benefits from being from toxic taking behavior, these benefits may include public recognition that the taker is very committed to the giver, along with the obvious financial support and emotional sympathy that's granted to the taker. In this situation, I perceive that the giver is naive and weak to resist the taker. I also feel that my share of emotional support and empathy is also channeled to that taker who is extracting returns all the time. As a result, I feel deprived in a real sense, and in a real sense, a loser in the public realm. This leads me to think that maybe I should go on the same toxic path, but my inner self does not allow me to break down and beg to take advantage or manipulate the situation in order to take at all costs. In this situation, my goal is to explain and enlighten the giver, who I love and care for, but I'm unable to do so each time because the giver assumes that I'm insecure and jealous of the taker in the story. Hence, this leads to my anger, resentment, and frustration towards the giver, and instead of caring for them, I end up losing my relationship to the giver. What should be my appropriate response? I feel helpless, dejected, and unworthy of anything. Please, so that's really the question. Now, I'm going to summarize this. I'm going to summarize this by, I beg your pardon, I'll just get back to the screen here. So my understanding of this question, if I understand it correctly, we're going to call them three people. All right. And just for convenience, we're going to call them actor A, actor B, and actor C. Actor A is a taking person who is manipulating the situation to their own benefit and is getting all sorts of benefits, both material and in terms of significance, by manipulating. Actor B is the manipulee, if there's such a word, the one who's being manipulated, and is the one who's actually supporting actor A in actor A's misdoing. Actor C is the observer to this drama. And actor C's view is that actor A should be helped, given the insight that you shouldn't be doing this. Actor C doesn't want to do that because actor C doesn't want to seem to be jealous of actor A. So I think that's the drama. And if I've understood this correctly, I would say to actor C, because actor C is the person who's given us the question, I'd say to you, why are you making somebody else's problem your problem? One of the key skills on this path is not just to mind your own business. And minding your own business is being very pedantic, very pristine, very exact about what actually is your problem. You know, we so often seek to intervene in the problems of others in the spirit of wanting to be helpful to them. And in that intervention, we actually create far more noise than what we are helpful. We get in the way. We don't help anything at all. We make the mess bigger. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't, on occasion, confront people, that you shouldn't say to them, listen, I think you could go, so if you're actor C, you could go to actor A and say to actor A, I think you're manipulating and you're being egocentric and destructive. You can go to actor B and you can say to actor B, listen, I think you're being cowardly. I think you should confront this. But once you've done that, don't manage the process. Don't manage the outcome. Stop trying to manage the outcome. The reason why we keep on cycling in problems is that we don't hand the problem to the Lord of resolution. And who's the Lord of resolution? It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We try and do his job for him. We don't stick to our thing. We don't do the thing that was in our hands. We sort of try and we own the problem of a resolution to the issue. And as a result, we become part of the drama and actually entrench the problem. You know, I firmly believe that the most useful thing you can do in any conflict of this nature is to learn how to get out of the way, to step aside, to not make your problem somebody else's problem your problem, to be very fastidious is the word I'm looking for, very fastidious about what exactly is your part in this problem. And if your part in the problem is to say something to one or two people, that's your piece done. That is shifting your attention from outcome into process. Outcome would be the issue resolved to the place where you want it to be resolved. Process is what is the immediate thing that you can do right now, which is the right thing to do, irrespective of whether the issue gets resolved or not. And then you do that thing and then you forego the outcome. Shifting your attention from outcome into process means foregoing the outcome, and you forego the outcome into the Rabb's hands. You say, I've done my piece, it is now in your hands. Whether this thing gets resolved or not is not up to me. The moment you do that, the moment you step out of the drama and you become less of a voice in the drama, is the degree to which you will help the resolution of the drama. You know, very often we confuse things because we get stuck in the middle. It is a little bit like a family dispute, you know. I mean, what happens when two brothers fight is when a stranger comes in and tries to intervene in the fight, they gang up on the stranger. You know, isn't that interesting how that happens? And that's not resolved the fight between the two brothers. It's just helped to kind of create more noise in the system. So don't be the one who intervenes. Step back. Make your intervention as short as you can, as specific as you can, as pointed as you can, to the point where you are you've done the thing that you think you can do, and then leave it. Do not try and resolve the matter, because you aren't the Lord of resolution. Allah is Khairul Makirin. He is the best of planners. He is the resolver of things. It is not up to us to resolve things. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. So, folks, I'll leave it open. If there's any other questions, I'll have a look in the chat now.
I do have a question if there's nothing in the chat right at
Yes,
the moment.
Miriam.
So, I was reading about how Imam Ghazali has written that intent is not always something that we choose, and it can, I think, it can be a bit difficult to understand because it makes me wonder how to purify our intent then. I mean, I would like to think that I'm doing things for a particular reason, and I would course correct when I feel like my intentions aren't completely pure. But how can we purify our intentions if we can't control them? And what can help?
This is very helpful, Miriam, because it does shed light on an issue which uh, isn't always explicit in how I describe this issue, because how I describe it sometimes makes it seem stupidly simple, and actually the matter is not simple. The reason for this is that you very accurately point out that our intent is layered. And what I mean by layered is that this part of our intent is explicit, it's part of our conscious awareness. It's what we deliberately choose to do. But there are many things that we do, we don't quite choose to do. We are compelled to do them. And that sense of compulsion comes from somewhere which is a little bit deeper than what we have conscious control over. Anybody who's had a smoking addiction will know that this is true, that you are compelled to do things which you have that is stronger than what you have rational control over, where at least you experience it as stronger than what you have rational control over. It is true, I think, that intent is carried in thought. You know, that I formulate an intent, and when I formulate an intent, I'm thinking that intent. And it's also true that our thought has depth to it. If you think about your inner realm, your inward space, there's part of your inward space which is that which you are self-aware of. It's the thoughts and feelings that you have, which are, if you like, objects to you. You can see them. But then we have thoughts and feelings which are deeper than what we don't see them as objects. They almost come from behind and bushwhack us. They sort of creep up on us, and they have a compulsive character, precisely because they sort of sneak up on us. They are housed at a realm which is deeper than what we have conscious control over. It's useful to not think of these two areas, that part of your thought which you're conscious of, and that part of your thought that you are unconscious of, as two sort of hermetically sealed compartments, because they aren't. In fact, it's a gray and not a black and white. So there's if you think of your using a vessel that has depth to it as a vessel to describe the nature of your consciousness, there's that which is right at the top of the vessel, which you have clear conscious. You can see that. It's the thoughts that you can change. You can, you have deliberate kind of control over what's going on there. And then it goes, there are thoughts that are sort of almost like they have a wistful kind of feel to them. They're almost like sighs or hints. They're whispering below the conscious, sort of bold, explicit thought. There's whispered thought, and those whisperings get quieter and quieter and quieter, to almost like just faint hints at depth. Now, most of those whisperings we're not aware of, we're not conscious of. So the first thing we need to do, if we're trying to cultivate a greater control over or autonomy over our intent, that our intent isn't loses its compulsive piece to it, that our compulsive piece also becomes something that we choose, is that we have to learn to become deeper as beings. We have to learn to occupy more of our inner space. We have to learn how to silence ourselves on the inside. Because the quieter you get on the inside, the deeper you sink into your inwardness, the more what was previously sort of hidden from view, because it was happening behind you, kind of you see sinking deeper than that. And then just like your normal thoughts could almost be like clouds in the sky that you witness, so too the whisperings become things that you're conscious of. That's what is meant by becoming self-aware. You become aware of what's in you that you aren't aware of. Now, what allows one to produce the quietness, the depth that uh, uh, enables us to become more aware of the whispering that goes on behind us? And by the way, Allah is very explicit about the whispering. He describes it in the Quran as the waswas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas. I mean, there's these sort of bubblings that go on in our hearts, in our beings, that are don't have entire sort of conscious control over. How does one get more conscious of that stuff? You start engaging in practice that is concerned with quietening your internal dialogue. Any practice that has the effect of quietening your internal dialogue. The principal one that we have is our salah. Now, going back to this whole issue of outcome, of a process over outcome, while you're doing your salah in the spirit of just rattling through it because it's a fard and you might go to hell if you don't do this, that salah is not going to be immensely useful to you. But when you're doing your salah in the spirit of sacralizing your life, and we now know how do you sacralize your life, you do the thing to do it well, that when you get onto the masala, you bring all of your attention onto the masala. You're very deliberate about every posture. As far as possible, you give as much attention to the thing that you're doing while you're doing it. You connect the adhkar that you do during the course of your salah with your breath. So if I'm doing Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, I might do the Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal on the in-breath and Azim on the out-breath, whatever I do it, but I deliberately connect what I'm doing with the physiology of what I'm doing, and I do what I do as well as I can, as deliberately as I can. I slow my salah down with the spirit, in the spirit again, of giving attention to the process rather than just getting through the salah. I do the salah to do it well. By the time I do that salah, my inner place, my inner state is completely different from it was when I did my takbir. I'm far quieter. And that quietness means I am more aware of what is my inner realm, my inner space. Over and above this, to have some daily practice of dhikr, which has the same effect, quietening your internal dialogue, or of muraqabah, same effect, quietening the internal dialogue, learning to go in and learning to silence, become quiet. All of these are practices which help to develop the depth whereby you become increasingly aware of what the thoughts are that are in your being. This complexity of thoughts that together orchestrate the complexity of your intent. Because you cannot change a thing if you aren't conscious of it. And becoming conscious of it means you take it from behind you, bushwhacking you in the whispering of the depth, and you pull your attention back so that it becomes in front of you. Now you can make a conscious choice about it. And when you can make a conscious choice about it, it no longer defines you. It loses its aspect of complexity, actually, because it becomes clear. I'm trying to find an example. Um, so um, I'm now, at the moment I'm sort of living two lives. I have a life in Sweden and a life in South Africa. And my life in Sweden is quite challenging because I'm having to learn a new language, and I'm very often in contexts where I feel excluded because I'm not understanding what's going on around me because I don't speak the language. I'm trying to learn, but it's at 65, learning another language is not for sissies. And the so I have been in situations, in fact, quite recently, where I was not happy when we were in a social engagement, and I left, and I felt alienated. I felt unwelcome, and I felt disengaged, and I felt it was a waste of my time. I shouldn't have gone there. And those were all the feelings. And and it took a little while, but then it became apparent to you. But I did choose to be in this context, and why am I? It's very simple. Why am I not? Why am I having this silence, sort of chatting to myself? Is because I was literally in a hermetically sealed bubble with this noise going on. I didn't actually. I saw people's mouths move, but I didn't know what was going on. So I felt excluded. You know. Now, it is true that I didn't understand what was going on. That's obviously, I didn't speak that. But the feeling excluded, that was a choice. And I didn't realize that was a choice initially. And obviously, that feeling excluded can then, if you allow that to fester with you for a while, you can really misbehave. You can do something really dramatic so that they take note of you, which would probably be inappropriate. Like, I don't know, insult the host or throw a glass on the ground or, I mean, you can do all sorts of creative things to be noticed because you're feeling like excluded. But the feeling of being excluded had nothing to do with the people that I was sitting with. It had everything to do with my own emotional response to not understanding what was going on. So there had to be a point where I got quiet enough with myself and kind of considered deeply myself, what is the judgment that I'm making on what's happening around me that's creating this feeling of being excluded? And once I realized that I'm making that judgment, I also said, but hold on, that judgment is a choice. I don't have to read into their behavior and intend to exclude me. I can read into their behavior, in fact, the opposite, because they've been told I'm trying to learn Swedish. So they were trying to sort of speak so that I could learn the language. They weren't trying to exclude me. That exclusion was my own experience of the thing, my own interpretation of what was going on. But that took a little while. I first had to be visited with the unpleasant experience of feeling excluded. Then I had to ask myself, well, what is the judgment that I have on this that's creating this feeling of exclusion that would then drive an intent to rectify my situation, And uh, it took a little while for that piece of process to happen, for me to get sort of reflective enough about what was going on inside me that I stopped blaming them for my experience. We do that so often. How often have you heard somebody say, "You make me feel"? Isn't that a strange sort of framing? I mean, nobody can make you feel. You make yourself feel. All of your feelings are your body's response to judgments that you have. And most of the judgments that you have, you're not at all conscious of. They're happening subliminally. And in fact, your body tells you have these judgments about this because the body produces the chemistry that's associated with the feeling that's associated with that judgment. So it is doing inner work creates the conditions where we develop the suppleness that we can be more exact about calling ourselves short, about calling ourselves to order in terms of our judgments of things and therefore our intent. So the process of clarifying intent is a process. It's actually a lifelong process. It's one of becoming more, learning to become deeper and deeper, operate from a deeper and deeper place, where more and more things that were previously not apparent to you become apparent to you. I hope that was useful, Miriam.
Extremely. This was very, very helpful. Thank you so much, Shaykh Saab.
Any other questions, folks, or shall we shut it down? Good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I'm always very honored when people arrive, and inshallah, we'll see each other a month from now. Thank you very much, Mahbub Sahab, for reminding me, because I forget. I can't believe that it was a month had gone by since the last one. I've sort of had so thank you for reminding me. All right.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Saab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
All the best.
Jazakallah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
وعليكم السلام.